Are you tired of getting limbs cut off in practice combat? Maybe you should learn how to make a sword out of foam. Hi, I'm Chris from Lost Wax. Today, I'm going to show you how I made a foam sword that's strong, safe, but still looks pretty cool. The main ingredient we need is a piece of foam that's reasonably dense and smooth on both sides. I used one of those puzzle piece floor mats, which isn't smooth on both sides, so I needed to take my sander and smooth out some of that texture. I put on my respirator to protect me from the foam dust, and started sanding with some coarse sandpaper. The palm sander works okay, but I found my belt sander to be a lot quicker and easier to remove that texture from the foam. Either way, it's a bit of a time-consuming, annoying process, so if you have some time, it might be worth ordering some quality foam. The foam doesn't have to be totally smooth because it's going to be on the inside of the sword where you're not going to see it, so as long as you get those big bumps off, you're good. Print out the pattern and tape it together, lining up those alignment marks. Cut out your pattern pieces and trace the sword twice on the ugly side of your foam. Now grab a brand new high quality knife blade for your knife. And this is super important because unless you have a really sharp knife, things are gonna get ugly. Now these cuts right here are the most important part for making your sword look good. This is where we create the beveled edge of the blade, and we want to cut it perfectly so we don't have to go back and sand it later, which ends up making it look just kind of fuzzy, and we don't want that on a sword. So as you can see, I'm holding the knife blade at an angle, and I'm trying to keep that exact angle through the whole cut. I'm also concentrating really hard on staying right on the line because I need my two halves to turn out exactly the same so that they match up later. Try to cut about halfway through on your first pass, then extend the blade and cut all the way through on the second pass. Definitely take some time to practice this on some scrap foam before using the foam that you spend a bunch of time sanding down. You can see here how I hold my index finger against the foam to maintain the correct angle for the knife blade and keep it consistent. If all goes well, you should have two sword halves that match up almost perfectly. Grab some 1/2-inch PVC conduit and cut it off at 64.5 centimeters long. Take a strip of paper and wrap it tightly around the PVC tube, lining up its top edge. Slide it off, squish it flat, and mark those two creases. Now when you slide it back on the tube, you can mark two lines exactly on the opposite side of the tube from each other. Perfect. Now lay a permanent marker flat on the table, then roll the tube until the mark on the tube lines up with the tip of the marker, and then you can mark that line all the way down your tube, and it's going to be a nice, straight, beautiful line. Make a mark at 44 and 48 centimeters down the tube, and use your fancy white piece of paper to draw a nice line all the way around. On the other end of the PVC, make a mark every 3 centimeters down one of the lines, and on the other line, start your marks 1.5 centimeters down from the end and mark every 3 centimeters as well. This means your marks should be staggered on either side of the pipe. And don't make any marks past that 44 centimeter line. Grab a 3mm drill bit and drill a pilot hole at every mark. And then drill out each hole with a big old 12mm bit. And you should end up with something a little bit like this. Now the reason that I've got the hole staggered is because we're going to heat it up with hot air, and I want the hot air to go in here, then hit the back side and heat up the other side at the same time, so that it's not just heating up right along this edge, that the heat is actually going through the pipe so that it's more even when I compress it. Okay, now PVC releases toxins when it gets heated too hot, so make sure you do some research and know what you're working with here. Do your heating outside and wear a respirator, and you only want to heat the plastic up just enough to get flexible and no more. Even at lower temperatures, PVC still releases fumes, so you really need to be careful. So anyways, clamp your pipe between two pieces of wood with the holes facing out. You don't want to flatten the handle, so the wood should only go down to where the end of the guard will be. In hindsight, I should have actually squished the PVC up to the next line on the handle. Okay, once you've got the clamp set up, it's just a matter of slowly heating the PVC in sections and tightening up the clamps as you go. Heat it equally from both sides, and like I've already mentioned before, don't get it too hot, don't breathe the fumes, take your time, and eventually it'll look awesome. I did find those C-clamps a bit annoying to use because they kept wanting to fall off, so if you have access to 4 trigger clamps like I have on either end, you'll be a lot happier than I was. Once you've got it squished how you want it, leave it for a while and let it cool down. And here's the final piece, ready to go inside my sword. You will notice that I left a bit of a taper as I got to the handle to give it a little bit more strength right near the hand. I did also go back and heat it up and squeeze it a little bit more on that section in between the two lines for the hilt. Line up the bottom edge of the sword with the line on the PVC pipe and trace around it. Extend your knife blade so it only goes about 5mm past the edge of the knife so it can't cut any deeper. Then you can make a 5mm deep vertical cut along the lines you traced around the PVC. Divide the space in between those cuts into 5 sections and make a 5mm cut down each of those lines. Make an angled cut on the first line in from each side that will connect to the bottom of the outside cut, removing a small wedge of foam. Now angle your cut in the other direction from the first line in to the second line in, removing another couple strips of foam. Looking from the back, it should look kinda like that. Now get your knife as flat as possible and cut out that middle strip. Now that you can hold your knife relatively flat, you can work from the center outward and remove the peaks on each of those first 2 strips you cut. And again, I will remind you this is only gonna work well if you have a very sharp knife. If you don't, you're gonna be as frustrated as a frustrated person. Use a bit of sandpaper to even everything out. And then repeat the process on the other piece. Cut out the handguard, transfer the contour onto the blade, and cut it out. Now it's hot glue time. Glue the embellishments to your handguard pieces. Glue your fancy custom-made PVC pipe into the cutout in one of the blades. Once that's cool, you can glue the tip of the blades together. Then, being generous with your glue, cover the PVC all the way down to the bottom of the blade. Keep some pressure holding the 2 halves together until the glue has cooled. Also make sure the edges are lining up as close as possible because this is your last chance to make that happen. Now go around the edge of the blade, gluing it together a section at a time, making sure the edges are lining up as you glue. If you find you're having a problem keeping the glue seam nice and clean, you should totally check out my hot glue gun tips video. It'll change your life. For the groove, we'll start with a line straight down the center and then one on either side. Make a cut along each outside line with a shallow angle towards the center. Remember, we've already cut in from the back side, so we don't have a lot of foam thickness left here. Alright, well there's the blade, now it needs the handguard. Glue the 2 handguard pieces together, only gluing the outside edges. Once it's cool, you can slide the guard up into place on the sword. Now glue the guard as tight as you can around the PVC pipe without actually gluing it to the PVC pipe. You need to make sure you hold it together until the glue is totally cool, otherwise it will want to pull apart. I found it worked best to glue one side at a time. And you don't want the guard to stick to the blade yet, so leave a small gap for the moment. Once that's done, you can slide the guard down the handle a little bit, apply glue between it and the blade as well as on the PVC pipe, and then slide it back into place. Clean up any extra glue before it hardens with a piece of cardboard or something similar. And just to be sure everything is good and strong, squeeze in some extra glue from the bottom. Trim off any weird bits on the tips of the guard, and it's time to paint. Time to paint it black. Once again, I'm using DecoArt Americana Premium Acrylic Paint in the color Carbon Black, which I received from DecoArt through their Helping Artist program. So the question I always get is, do you need a primer for your foam before you paint it? And I'm going to say, I don't know, maybe. If you're going to spray paint your foam, you definitely need something on there to seal it. Otherwise the spray paint, it's so thin it just goes in. If you are just going to paint your foam with acrylics like I generally do, then why not just use the acrylic paint as the primer? Because really, what is a primer? It's just something to seal the foam, fill in the holes, something that stays flexible, adheres to your foam, and really, acrylic paint does all of those things. Apply at least 3 coats of acrylic paint. Once the black is completely dry, it's time to make it look metally. I'm using DecoArt Americana Decor Metallics paints. Right now my favorite sort of antique silver color is actually a mix of 2 of their paints. So I mix the silver color and the pewter color in about equal proportions. Now go ahead and rub that paint onto your sword. If you need more information on my painting technique, you can check out some of my other videos, but the basic gist of it is dip your finger in some paint, smear it around, and then smear it on your sword. Remembering that areas that would get the most use should be the silveriest. Once that's done, go pull out your pile of leather scraps that you've been saving for years for no particular reason. Cut 2 strips approximately 3 centimeters wide and 70 centimeters long. But don't use it yet. Instead, grab some hockey tape and start wrapping it around the center of the handle. We're doing this to add some contour to the handle, so we'll create a bit of a bulge in the center. As you wrap the tape, give it a couple twists. This will build up the thickness much quicker than if you had just used it flat. Keep going, wrapping around and around, trying to concentrate the most thickness at the center and having it taper down as it gets toward either end. The great thing about using hockey tape is it has a bit of a rough texture and can sometimes be a bit sticky on both sides, so when you wrap your leather over top of that, it kinda helps to hold it in place without it sliding around. Once you like how it looks, wrap it 1 or 2 more times with the tape just flat, and there you go. Cut a steep angle on your strip of leather, glue it to the top of the handle, and start wrapping it down the handle, making sure you have a bit of overlap over each previous wrap. And a touch of hot glue at the end to hold it in place. I'm going to use my other strip of leather just to make like a big leather strip stack or something at the back of the handle. So just wrap that strip of leather around and around and around, gluing it as you go so that it doesn't move. And then a little foam circle to close off the end. And that's it, we just made a sword. There you go, super sweet foam sword ready for your next adventure. There will be a link for the template at the end of the video and in the description below, so you can get that. I'm gonna have it be free right now. I might incorporate it later into a bunch of patterns for different weapons, so get it now while it's free. If you're watching this video and it's not free anymore, well, that's a good reason to subscribe, and then you won't miss out on any super sweet deals. Also, we're starting a bit of a community for transcribing my videos, so you can check that out in the links below for more information. All right, now you can go out and have fun with your new sword. And don't forget to play safe. See ya.